It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you to make better financial decisions in your life. Today, you're serving me and your fellow listener and viewer by giving feedback in our weekly Clark Stink segment. And that's when you let me know where, in your opinion, I failed to deliver. Also, so many of us are receiving unsolicited offers for us to sell our home in the midst of the housing shortage. Well, I got to tell you, those are not necessarily gifts that you're getting in those solicitations. I want to tell you how to know what to look for if you've been kind of like thinking about selling your house and somebody says, hey, I'm ready to buy. What do you do? And this is a warning especially for, gosh, this is a bookend, because earlier in the week we talked about protecting older relatives and friends. Yeah. This is an area they're especially susceptible to. But right now, we get to hear how I'm messing up.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
I may have missed this from earlier shows since I only found your podcast about 3 years ago, but you haven't mentioned the cost savings from cutting your hair at home. I bought a Flowbee hair cutting system in 1992, the one that uses a vacuum cleaner to pull the hair straight to the cutting blades.
You ever seen it done?
I've only seen the commercials.
No, I've seen it in person, because I had a friend when I was in radio who was a manager, but he was cheaper than I am. And he would use the Flowbee, and he said, I'm going to bring it in one day. And I watched him give himself a Flowbee haircut.
It cost about $90. I have used it ever since and have saved a bunch over the years by not having to go to a barber. I have an unfashionable but practical hairstyle similar to Clark's. It takes less than 15 minutes from start to finish. No waiting or drive time. Local Michigan Supercuts charges about $22 for a basic cut. So with tax and tip, it's about $28. I cut my hair about every 3 weeks. 32 years works out to be about 555 cuts. At $28 a cut, this amounts to $15,540, not including the cost of gas to get there and back. I haven't calculated what it might have come to if I had the money invested in a basic index fund over those 32 years, but my guess is it would be over $20,000. Unfashionably yours, Bruce.
Bruce, thank you. After I watched the in-person demo of the Flowbee, I realized that you and my friend in radio were both really great with it. I would not be. I have no ability. My wife always says my head's a little cockeyed. I have no ability to do spatial stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either.
When I was at HLN, the TV network, and I had my show, they were obsessed with me using green screen, like the weather people. And you could see all the eye rolls, because I'd always be pointing the wrong way, either over here or over there. Those of you in YouTube show can see it. It was a riot how bad I was. I'm not cutting my own hair.
Clark was talking about umbrella policies, but I felt he missed out on sharing the complete picture with his listeners. When you get an umbrella policy, the insurer will make you raise your coverages on your current policy to the maximum levels in order to qualify for having the umbrella policy, then cover you for the next level of coverage. Since most people just have the state minimum coverages, this will almost double your policy premium, and I was taken aback when my insurer told me my new premium price. Yes, the umbrella policy is reasonable, usually a couple of $100s, but to get to qualify for the umbrella policy, you'll be paying up. I still think they're a good idea to have, by the way. Thanks for all you do, Bob. And Bob was not the only one who wrote in about that.
Yeah, so here's what happens. If you buy, for those who don't know what we're talking about, an umbrella insurance policy is one that lays over all your liability risk in your life, pretty much. And so in order to qualify for the umbrella policy, they require that you have certain liability limits that are probably higher than you have already on your auto and homeowners and whatever the stray things are that you're protecting liability from in order to have the umbrella overlay that's sold in $1 million increments, amazingly cheap per million. But yes, you may be, this is a success tax. If you have a lot of assets, they're at risk from one mistake where you look down at your text and you go through a red light and you injure somebody or worse. Or something happens on your property, whatever it is. So if you have a lot of assets, you do not want state minimums on auto insurance for liability. You do not want the lowest you can get on your homeowners for liability. You want to have hefty liability, and you're going to pay more for that. So what do? You raise your deductibles on your auto insurance and your homeowners as high as your lender will permit you, which should compensate for a lot of that, because you don't want to make small claims anyway against auto or homeowners. But yes, that is how the process works, and I've not explained that properly. I apologize.
Clark is great, but a bit off on using up prepaid cards. Instead of making small purchases to drain the balance, prepay a utility bill with the amount remaining on a card. It is much easier, Steve.
Steve,
you're one.
Brilliant. I love it. And I can't wait to pull those out and do exactly what you suggested, paying a utility bill.
Clark, you stink worse than a gallon of expired milk. Okay, not really. I just had to follow suit of the other Clarkies. This is really more of an important warning. Recently, you discussed Chinese e-commerce companies such as Temu, but did not mention the warnings that have come from federal cybersecurity experts and agencies about the data these apps collect, and more importantly, where it is stored. I encourage you and your listeners to do further research, but I strongly recommend that if you use them, you only install the app when needed, immediately deleting it afterward.
And can I say something about that?
Yes, there is a second thing about this, though.
Oh, go ahead. Read the second one.
OMG, this is regarding to the segment about, oh, no, never mind. That wasn't it. There was somebody who wrote in and said that you talked about Temu and why you won't use them because of the child labor laws, but then the second later you talked about other stuff that you buy cheap, which probably also comes from China.
So this is, let's deal just with the one from Jonathan right now, and that is, I talked about in a podcast and YouTube show earlier this week about how Amazon is starting a competitor embedded in Amazon.com with much slower delivery and equivalent prices, allegedly, to what's available from Temu and Shein. So it will still be coming from Asia, the goods, and that's actually where they'll originate, which is why the delivery is so much longer. But you wouldn't have the issues you're talking about with cybersecurity and what the Chinese may be collecting on Temu about us.
Your advice to run the AC down to 68 at night with a top of 78 during the day resulted in a $75 increase over last month and last year the same month. Terrible advice, Milton.
Milton, gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. Is it possible that it was a lot warmer where you live this year in the same month that bill was for as last year? You don't want to turn your air conditioning off on a hot day, but you do want to have it where you're comfortable sleeping at night, and then during the day have it higher. And the numbers you said, those are what we do, because my family likes to sleep like they're in a refrigerator. So
I do too.
It's 78 during the day and 68 when we sleep.
Mine's 69 when I sleep. Actually, my electricity bill was way up year over year. I know we may not live in the same area, Milton, but I was really shocked, and I didn't change the temperatures. No offense, but this is the second time you've talked about minivans and not even mentioned the Chrysler Pacifica, which is a great value and the only minivan with middle fold flat seats. Tom.
Tom? You sure Tom is not impersonating Lane? Because my wife Lane really wants a minivan again, and the only one she's interested in is the Pacifica because they have a patented middle seat system. You know how when you had an Odyssey and when we had an Odyssey, getting that middle row of seats out is like an orthopedic surgeon's friend because it'll destroy your back. the Chrysler Pacifica thing, because I've had them as rental vehicles several times, is brilliant. I mean, the middle seats vanish into the floorboard. Not if you get a hybrid Pacifica, but if you get a gas engine, yes, now I've said it.
OMG, this is in regard to the segment about returning old Amazon devices and getting newer ones for 20% off. I could not believe my ears when I heard Clark and his new role as a shill for Amazon. He actually said, let Amazon generate cash for you. How is buying something for $80 instead of $100 generating cash? So we should dig out our old Amazon devices that we never use and do what? Turn them in for new Amazon devices that we will probably never use. And then a few years later do the same thing? At least you're making the UPS happy, Tom.
Tom, thank you. I really said that?
I guess. But you did say for people who are into Amazon devices, like if you're like I have my Kindle, I use my Kindle all the time.
That would be horrible. That would be like splaving, where you pretend you're saving, but you're spending.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You talked about the program for people who do love their Amazon devices.
Wow.
Only.
And I said, let me read this quote. What did I say?
Generate cash for you.
Generate cash for you. Oh, man, if I said that, I apologize.
Maybe
You're
you just
right.
got excited.
I should be ashamed, embarrassed. I'll go hide right now.
Okay. Mr. Howard, I adore you, but your response to the caller asking about stacking car insurance stunk more than the giant pile of seashells at the beach rotting in the sun. You answered his question with a non-answer. I still don't understand what it is and how to do it after listening 3 times to that part of the podcast and even consulting my Clark listening buddy, Doug. Please explain it in detail. Thanks for all you do, except this time, Jennifer.
Jennifer, thank you. All right, so what stacking is you have coverage per vehicle, and then you have total coverage. So in states and from insurers that offer stacking, what it is it allows you to take your individual coverages and stack them onto each other. So if you have 20,000 per vehicle,
right,
and you have an incident in one vehicle, you're not having an incident in 2 or 3 vehicles at once. But let's say you're a family of 3 vehicles. Mm-hmm. You can take the 20 and the 20 and the 20 and stack them together as 60 in that incident. That is the simplest way to explain something that now insurance people, their eyes are glazing over because it is so complicated and has so many wrinkles to it. If you want to really dig in, you want to know in your state whether stacking is part of policies and how it works in your state, and you would call the consumer line at your state insurance department and hope they are well versed and can explain how stacking works under the law if an insurer is either required or can offer stacking in your state.
I'm a teenager, and I love the show and make anyone who rides in my car listen to your show if they want to ride. You don't stink,
Wow.
but you missed the mark on this one. How can we take you seriously when talking about Social Security when you don't know how many members are in Congress? You said there are 538 members in Congress. When that isn't correct, there are 100 senators and 435 members of the House of Representatives, which is 535 members of Congress. You were probably thinking of the 538 Electoral College votes, 535 membranes out of Congress plus 3 votes for D.C. Dan. Members from Congress.
Dan, thank you. What I count is the non-voting delegates. So D.C. has a non-voting delegate. Does Puerto Rico have a non-voting delegate? Of course, there's 100 senators, 435 members, voting members of the House. Do you know that depending on who's in charge of the U.S. House at a time, that the non-voting delegates from a jurisdiction are allowed to vote in committees, but they're not allowed to vote when the bill reaches the floor of the House. So 535, 538, the technical correct answer, you're right, is 535.
Clark's recent podcast and the Clark.com guide about how long to keep documents missed the Roth IRA contribution and conversion records. These documents, Form 5498 and Form 1099-R, should be kept forever. They will be needed to determine the total basis of contributions and conversions for reporting on your tax return when you start taking distributions from your Roth IRA. Rick.
Rick, you are completely right. It is an oversight. You know what else? Christa and I were talking about it the other day. When you own a home and you do improvements that would be eligible for what's known as adjusting the basis of the home, which reduces the potential of having to pay taxes at the time you go to sell a home, you've got to have records of those major improvements you did to your home. So obviously with the Roth, that is a major improvement in your life, and you need to keep thorough records with conversions from a traditional to a Roth over the years. And as you said, that's a forever rule. You're right, and I failed to mention it. And the house stuff I've mentioned before, it bears repeating. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time today, because I know it takes time for you to do the post you do. And I want to go back and say one thing to Dan. Do your friends, when they ride with you, say that Dan stinks? Making them listen to me while they're in the car as teenagers? They'll appreciate it someday. They just might not right now. If there's something you've heard me say on the podcast that feels completely out of line, bad advice, incomplete, whatever it is, please take the time to go to clark.com/ClarkStinks. We all learn together. And coming up ahead, what I mentioned earlier, if you didn't hear, I'm going to talk about the people who say, hey, we'd love to buy your home quick. What's that about? What are the dangers? I have a situation that may be unusual relative to others. I have investment real estate and the place we live. And so I'm in an especially fortunate position in that I own 5 properties free and clear. Very unusual, very lucky, but it's just part of how I've set up my life. And so I get solicited every single week, multiple solicitations, asking me if I'm willing to sell this home, that home, the other home. And some of them I have in LLCs, and so I immediately know which property they're trying to make me an offer on. And here's what you need to know. We know there's this housing shortage in the United States of millions of housing units. There are also a lot of houses in the U.S., perhaps a third. Imagine this, if you're paying that mortgage company every month, roughly a third of homes are owned free and clear. And because of the run-up in home values from 19 to 24, there are also a lot of homes that still have a mortgage but now have quite a bit of equity. So this has become a dare-to-be-rich thing where people are trying to score big, coming to you saying, hey, I'd love to buy your home. They've never seen your home. It has a lot of equity in it, or it's owned free and clear, and they're hoping that you're looking for the easy button. And they don't know, out of every 1,000 they send out, they might get a response from a couple of people. If they're really lucky, one of those people will say, yeah, maybe I'll sell it to you. And they'll make an offer. And let me tell you, it's going to be a low-ball offer. Nobody's getting up in the morning saying, I'm going to be a hero to this individual who owns his or her home free and clear or has all that equity. No, they're business people. And they're not crooks. But you may feel that you got taken when later on you realize, uh-oh, my home was worth X number of $100,000 more, or whatever the amount is, than what I took. So if you have been kind of thinking, you've been kind of on the fence about selling your home, and you get these solicitations, and I don't know if there's a specific profile that would mean that you're somebody who's getting all these letters, but it will tend to be people who own free and clear or have a lot of equity. When you're getting these, if it triggers you to think you might want to sell your home, you can hear them out if you want. But if it really does get you to think, maybe it is time for me to move on, then what you want to do is you want to go through the normal process of potentially interviewing agents. And you say, I don't like agents. Let me tell you, if you're paying an agent 3% to market your home because you don't want the hassle of it, that's a cheap 3%. And you want people who sell in your general area. You don't want somebody who's soliciting you from across the country. You want somebody who knows your area. And you can always take a cash offer that came in unsolicited like that. But before you do, you want a sense of fair value. Because once you agree and you sell, and later on you realize, oops, I left all that money on the table, it's too late. You told me you're not getting these at your house when we were talking about this. I haven't gotten them
in a while. I mean, I did for a long, it was just constant, the texts especially, like from people. But no, I haven't gotten one in a while.
I get actual physical solicitations. They're not emails.
I may. If it looks like junk mail to me, it's gone.
Oh, it's gone?
I just recycle it right away.
I read you want to send junk mail to somebody, I read every single piece. Do you know why?
Why?
It's part of my job.
Oh, okay.
I got to know what's up, what things are being pitched and all that.
I guess I should pay more attention.
You have a busy life. I don't.
No, that is so untrue. Okay, Robert in Georgia wants to know where you think the best place is to buy a laptop.
All right, so, gosh, Robert, you're a genius because the where is not as important as the when. And this is for the when. You may be a couple of weeks late. And it's funny, we were talking earlier this week when kids go back to school. And the reality is, in a lot of the country now, kids are already back in school or about to start in the next couple of days, maybe as soon as Monday. And so the back-to-school sales on computers started right after the 4th of July holiday, but they're still going on. So the deals are great. I have a big bias towards Costco, because they give such a lengthy additional coverage on it if you have the Costco card, and they have the great support that comes with buying one there. But they're not necessarily going to be the cheapest. The cheapest place around the country to buy, and they're certainly not everywhere in the country, historically has been Micro Center. Micro Center is a small chain of computer stores geared towards people that are generally in the business. They may work in an IT department or whatever, but they also sell just simple laptops, and they sell them day in and day out cheaper than anybody else. During this time of year, though, everybody's offering deals. I mentioned Costco. Sam certainly does. Best Buy. I know people seem to have forgotten Best Buy exists. They're still out there. Sales are everywhere. And the general discounters like Walmart offer discounts on laptops this time of year. So it's really, really easy. And Macs are, if you're into Mac instead of Windows, I use Chromebooks. Macs are so cheap this back-to-school season. Remember, Mac comes in the M1 chip, M2 chip, M3 chip. If you just need a basic machine, the deals on new computers with the M1 are, for Apple, really cheap.
I was going to say for Apple. Yeah.
For Apple, around $600.
Yeah.
$650 right in there. And the Windows computers, when you're looking for a lead price one for a student in school who just needs a Windows laptop, around $229 will get you a pretty capable one. Chromebooks are not as cheap as they used to be, but they're much more capable. They're going to be similar price points to the Windows computers.
And make sure you're subscribed to our Clark Deals newsletter because they all put laptop deals in there all the time. You can go to clark.com/newsletters or just go to clarkdeals.com.
And right now, because of all the back-to-school stuff going on, there are great deals on laptops.
And if you didn't hear
Clark's
back-to-school segment, the whole segment you did last week, go back and listen to that too if you're looking for school supplies specifically.
Earlier somebody said that I'm a big kiss up to Amazon. I didn't even mention that. But they're usually not the cheapest on things like that.
Christine in Maryland says, I recently got laid off from my job and left with 80 hours of vacation time on the books. However, my employer said that in light of the fact that I worked through the month of June, they would be willing to pay me for 5 days of unused time. Can they do this? Is this legal? And why would I not be paid for the 80 hours?
First things first, Christine, I'm really sorry that you've been laid off. And I know we're going to hear more of that as the economy has gone down a gear.
Yeah, you did a segment on that last week too, yeah.
But I'm really, really sorry. I want you to know, in spite of that, there's still very low unemployment rates in the country and still opportunity. We're not in a time with extremely high unemployment numbers like I talked about last week, but I'm speaking to you now. The other thing, living in Maryland, there's, as you know, such a large number of government employers in the state of Maryland with the overflow from the federal government, state of Maryland, and from county governments in the state of Maryland, that's an area where local governments in particular still, and state governments, still complaining they can't fill vacancies. And if you've never thought of that, that may be an area of opportunity. Now to your question about vacation. Private employers, unless there's a state prohibition on this, credit vacation in hours, in your case it's 2 weeks, throughout the year. And if they decide to lay you off at the halfway point, they only give you the prorated amount of that in pay. And it depends on the employer what they do. But that is a common occurrence, what occurred to you.
And if you look at your last pay stub or, one of your pay stubs from this year, often, almost always I've seen there's something called VAC-ACCU, or vacation accrual hours. So they should be accruing the hours. So if you have accrued 80 hours, they should pay you out the 80 hours, I would think. So, but if it's just 40 hours, then it's the 5 days.
But if the 80, who knows? It sounds like on the issue, is it legal? That completely depends on what labor law is in the state of Maryland. And you could talk to the Maryland Labor Department and find out, is an employer allowed at time of layoff to short you on vacation pay? And you would have your answer. In a lot of states, they're silent on this kind of thing. A state like Maryland is more government-oriented. I bet they do have some kind of rules concerning vacation pay. And I want to wish you the best in the job market moving forward.
Absolutely. Ted in Colorado says, I got my first house last year at a 7.6 loan rate of 6.75%. I always feel the clock is ticking. Should I be constantly shopping around for refi and have the banks and credit unions on the lookout for me, or should I just sit back and wait for a substantial rate cut? Thank you for all you do. Keep up the good work, and I listen to your podcast every day.
So, Ted, you feel like the sword's hanging over you, but you got 6 more years left in this 7-6 arm. Nobody ever asks a 7-6. They'll ask 5-1, 7-1. Just so you know, if you hear a 7-6, not a common occurrence around the country. It means after the 7 years, your mortgage interest rate changes every 6 months for as long as that loan stays in place. Interest rates are going to decline on mortgages as the economy slows, as inflation slows. You'll see it. As I mentioned, the 10-year Treasury, which is like CDs for rich people, the interest rates earning on that have been going down as there's less inflationary worries. So there's going to be an opportunity, Ted, probably sometime in 25, that it would make sense for you to do a refi into some form of fixed rate loan that would get you down from the 6.75. We're not there yet, but I think it's pretty likely we're going to see it. You would not want to wait till like you're a year from the end of this ARM to say, adjustable rate mortgage, that I'm going to start looking for a loan to replace it. Then you could end up over a barrel in a higher interest rate cycle. And that's why you want to pay attention when we do go through a decline. We're not going back to the old rates, but rates that start with a 5, I think there's a pretty good likelihood of that happening, and there'll be fixed rate loans. And thank you so much for joining us this week. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic weekend and know what we're about. You learning ways to save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off.